So when you're making your character now, you will first choose your class, the most important choice you make for your character, and then you will flesh out your character's origin. And so we like to think of it as you might decide, I want to be a fighter, or I want to be a rogue, or a cleric, or a wizard. And then you think, well, how did I get there? What did I do before I was a member of that class? And what do I know about my character's childhood? And so it's when you start pondering those questions that you turn toward the character origins chapter. And you will essentially be going back in time in your character's backstory. So again, you start with your class, then you'll ponder, well, what was my character's background? And background is all about not only what you did prior to becoming an adventurer, but also where you did it. You know, were you a sailor? Were you a criminal? Were you an acolyte in a temple? Were you a sage? And then you keep going back in time in your character's origin to your birth. And that's when you then ponder your character's species. And your species choice and your background choice together combine to give you a number of critical game capabilities that will really help flesh out your character. Background has far more weight for your character now than it did in the 2014 rules. People in the Unearthed Arcana process got to see a preview of this, where in addition to giving you proficiencies, as backgrounds previously did, backgrounds also now all give you a feat at first level. They also determine ability score bonuses for you when you make your character. And these are ability score bonuses that really are rising up out of how your character spent their time prior to embarking on the wilds of adventure. And those two things in particular, the ability score adjustments that backgrounds bring, as well as the feat, mean your background will have an effect on your character for your entire career. And that was something that was not necessarily the case in 2014 backgrounds, except for perhaps the proficiencies you got.
Right.
You would still enjoy those throughout your career. But now there are more parts of your character that are forever affected by your character's background. Now, to support the use of feats at first level, we have now divided feats up into categories, because we don't want a first level character to be plunged into the deep end of the feat pool. We want you to be able to sample feats and to have that sampling be curated so that the feat you get from your background is from a special selection of feats that are appropriate for a starting character. And so those feats are now in a category called origin feats, appropriately enough, because you get them as a part of your character origin. Now, even though they're in that category, later on, if you decide to go deeper into feats, you could potentially choose other origin feats for your character as well. But to start, each person gets just one origin feat that's provided by their background, in addition to the proficiencies your background is providing, as well as the ability score adjustments. Now, those ability score adjustments to me are really juicy because of the flexibility that we provide. And this is a flexibility that goes beyond anything that we previewed in Unearthed Arcana. So what we now do in each background is we provide 3 ability options. And then you as a player decide, am I going to put +2 in one of those 3, and you choose which of the 3, and then +1 in one of the other 2, or am I going to do +1 in all 3? So here's an example. The acolyte, if you decided your character, whatever class you're a part of, spent their formative years serving in a temple in some capacity, you could choose acolyte. And the acolyte background tells you that the 3 abilities that you have the option to adjust are intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. And you have total freedom in which of those you decide gets the +2, which one gets a +1, or if you maybe don't want to make that choice and just give +1 to all 3.
Right.
We did this because we want backgrounds to interlock with as many appropriate classes as possible. Previously, when we previewed this approach to backgrounds of them providing ability score adjustments, one of the downsides of the playtest version is it kind of hard-locked the backgrounds to specific classes.
Yeah.
And we did not want to proceed with that because in some ways that was recreating the exact problem that we were getting away from 2014 Species, because in 2014 these ability score adjustments existed inside the playable species, and one of the reasons we moved it out of there is we didn't like how that drove certain species to be combined with certain classes. We wanted people to feel more free to mix and match. And so here, rather than just recreate the same restriction, we now do have a little bit of a restriction, but you have tremendous amount of flexibility within it. I mean, because you have 3 of the game's 6 abilities to play with, no matter which background you choose. And really, it's just which 3 changes from background to background. And we made sure that there was a broad range of character building options in the different backgrounds to support many different character builds. Like if I jump ahead in the chapter to the guide, for instance, the guide's 3 abilities are dexterity, constitution, and wisdom. That combo means the guide is actually a happy background for a number of different classes, particularly because everyone is happy to have constitution. Really, any background that has constitution as one of the 3 will work with pretty much any class. And this was something very much on our minds as we created these trios in each of the backgrounds to really make sure that the 16 backgrounds in this book provide a huge array of character building options. And now if someone wants to go beyond the 16 background options in the player's handbook, the new Dungeon Master's Guide provides guidance under the DM's supervision on creating additional backgrounds. But in the player's handbook itself, there are these 16 to choose from. There are a few backgrounds that share the feats that they offer because we did not want to force people to choose a certain background
because that was optimal
for certain feats. Now, there are a number of feats that are, only one background offers that feat. But there are a few, and Alert is a great example of them, where the feat is offered by more than one background.
Right. Skilled is a similar one as well.
Yes, particularly because the skilled feat is so open-ended. All of these combinations of options, the feats, the ability score adjustments, the proficiencies, also the starting equipment that the backgrounds provide, mean that each background is a package of very distinct options from the other backgrounds. Of course, you can dig deeper into feats if you decide to at higher levels. When everyone reaches 4th level, they get ability score increase, just as they did in the 2014 Player's Handbook. But ability score increase is now itself a feat. And just like in 2014, you have the option of taking that feat or selecting a different one. And because we now have given everyone a taste of feats at 1st level, we wanted to make sure that this book had more feats available, which is why there are 75 of them in this book, so that if you do decide to go into the fun customization world of feats, there's more there for you to play with, and the feats have all been enhanced, in some cases completely redesigned. And then there's the whole other half of your origin, your species.
Right, and we've got a lot of new things in the species. We've got new additions. So the orc has joined, Goliaths have joined, and
The Aasimar. And those 3 brand new options, and they join, of course, classic options like human, elf, halfling, gnome, the tiefling, the dragonborn are still with us as well. And every one of these species has been revisited, has been enhanced. A number of these enhancements people got to see in the Unearthed Arcana process, with like the Dragonborn having an enhanced breath weapon, and then when they get to higher level, even gaining the ability to sprout wings and fly.
Yeah.
And even humans and halflings have been revisited and in some of their traits redesigned.
The Dragonborn are super Dragonborn. The Goliaths are very Goliath, because now they're tied to giants. Not surprisingly, if you have the background being a cloud giant in your heritage, then you can kind of, Misty Step away, teleport away, because you're more of a trickster. But it's all based off like hill giant, storm, stone. All of it has different abilities that you can choose from.
And that is a part of the theme that we had with the species, which was to really lean into the fantasy of each one. This is why dwarves now have tremor sense
Which
that
is
they
amazing.
can use a certain number of times a day, where we, again, wanting to lean harder into what is the resonant fantasy of each of these peoples, and part of that with dwarves, with their connection to the earth. Well, let's give them this really a remarkable ability a certain number of times per day to sense things through the earth itself. Their dark vision has also gotten better. Dwarves and orcs both have dark vision out to 120 feet in the new player's handbook, really driving home that certain peoples have spent, at least their ancestors have spent more time underground than some of the other peoples. Humans, I mentioned, have been redesigned with the origin feats in the game in mind, because now if you choose human, you get to choose an additional origin feat for your character. So you'll not only get the origin feat of your background, but also one of your choice. And humans now each day start off with heroic inspiration. And
That's right.
also, people will see that because we want each species to really bring its own fantasy to life, they're very asymmetrical in how we have designed them. So some of them have choice points in them where, you mentioned the Goliath earlier, where you might be picking a type of giant that you're associated with, or, Dragonborn have their different breath weapon options. But then we have others like the halfling, the dwarf, the orc, where there aren't choice points like that because their fantasy didn't demand that in the design, but it's also because we did not want every single one to have the same complexity level. Just as our classes and subclasses have different complexity levels, the species have different complexity levels as well.
So we talk about a lot about meeting that fantasy, that wish fulfillment. Mechanically, that's done as well in action economy. The Goliath, being that it is now tied closer to giants, you can get big. Once you hit a certain level, you can go one size larger. But you can do this as a bonus action. You're not taking a full action to have that happen for you. You're just getting big and then possibly attacking and terrifying a group. Dragonborn is the same thing, and this was a change that we saw in a previous book, but you can now use your breath weapon. Not only does it get more powerful over time, but if you take the attack action, one of those attacks can be the breath weapon.
Absolutely.
So you're not sacrificing, if you're a fighter, a bunch of your attacks, that could have been possibly more effective by using the breath weapon. You're just layering it on to what you can already do.
And another example of us really deepening the fantasy and giving people more options is in the Aasimar, where before you had to pick a single celestial revelation, and that was true for your character forever. You now get to change that choice every time you use it, because we figured, well, an Aasimar who is descended from celestials sure might have some days where they're in the mood to shine with light, but they might also have some days where they're more on the vengeful end of the celestial spectrum and choose one of the other celestial revelation options.
So significant changes to species. We've got several more species to work with, and a lot of layered on abilities that kind of hit that, again, that wish fulfillment of like, this is what I want. I want to be a big character, a big Goliath. I can get big. Bonus action, I'm huge. Now I'm just going to pummel.
The character creation chapter in this book includes a sidebar that explains how to use backgrounds and species from older books. Because over the last decade, there have been several different approaches to where you get your ability score increase, do you get a feat or not. We have a rule in the character creation chapter on how to use backgrounds or species from other books that don't appear in this book. So any species or background that appears in this book that also appeared in an earlier book, the version in the New Player's Handbook is now the canonical version. But if there's, say, a species or background in an older book that is not in the New Player's Handbook and you would still like to use it, you can. And again, the character creation chapter provides guidance on how you can do that.
The New Player's Handbook is available for pre-order right now on D&D Beyond. You can find that link in the video description. And you can also find the new Core Rulebooks bundle for pre-order, both physical and digital. Thank you so much for watching. We have a ton of video content coming out about the New Player's Handbook and all the new Core Rulebooks, the new Monster Manual, the new Dungeon Master's Guide. So be sure to check out all of that content. And thank you for watching.